Welcome to Sacred Caregiving. My name is Barbara, and this week we continue our theme of death and dying. This is the conversation nobody wants to have. What happens when someone dies? It's emotional, it's uncomfortable, but it's also practical. And when the grief is still raw, when you feel like you're running on empty, having these pieces in place can save time, energy, and a whole lot of headache. We're not stepping away from the emotion, we're stepping into the part that helps us carry it. And if you are grieving, I want you to know you deserve care. You deserve safety. And you are not alone. My mom was a nurse for over 40 years. She had a saying that she lived by and that she imparted to the nurses she worked with right up until her death. Do what's in the best interest of the patient. So when she was on hospice, she approached her death the same way, with clarity, compassion, and a deep sense of responsibility. She wasn't just thinking about herself. She was thinking about me, about how to make things easier after she was gone. She took care of what she could, quietly, thoughtfully, ahead of time. She went online with the Neptune Society and basically went shopping. She picked out her own urn. She picked out the little urn that carried some ashes for her brother. And she asked both her brother and I if we wanted ashes. And we both said yes. So my uncle got a small green urn because his last name was Green. And I got this bracelet with the little purple stone on it because purple is my favorite color. And that carries like about a thumbnail worth of just like about that much ashes in it. It's part of how I carry her with me. So after she was done shopping, she sent me to the Neptune Society to make the arrangements and pay for everything. Then, when our minister came to the house for a home visit, she took the time with him to plan her memorial service. She told me where the important documents were in the house. She gave me the gift of clarity so that when the time came, I could just grieve. And that clarity didn't end with paperwork. It extended to the ceremony itself. Funeral plans matter, not just for logistics, but for emotional peace. You can ask, do they want a funeral? Do they have something specific in mind? Do they have a specific place in mind? Do they have songs that they would like played? Or do they want something quieter? My mom died in November 2014, and I waited until January 2015 after the holidays to have the memorial service. Because as my minister pointed out, there was no body rotting. We didn't have to have the funeral immediately when she died in November, which took a lot of pressure off of me because, like I said, she died a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving. So it was like we were heading headlong into all of the big holidays: American Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. I didn't really want to throw a memorial service on top of all of that because I knew people would be going out of town. I knew things would be happening. So when my minister said, you can have the memorial service whenever you want, he's like, he told me he had known people that had waited a few years after the person died to have it because that was when they were ready to let go and say goodbye. So I waited until January after the holidays to hold a memorial service, or as we called it, a celebration of life. It was at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Belvedere, California, where we both attended. The church was completely packed. I spoke. One of her best friends, Gwen, spoke. Her nephews did readings. Her brother Frederick spoke. She had a solo piper. One of her favorite folk singers, Peter Daltrey, sang Caledonia at the service and then performed again at the reception. Dante's Inferno barbecue catered just like she wanted. It was a large, loving gathering of family and friends. Cut to 10 years later, and her brother, my Uncle Frederick, chose something different for his end of life. He didn't want a formal memorial service. Family and friends simply gathered at a park nearby and shared stories and laughed and cried. Then later, his son scattered his ashes in a place that held meaning for them. It was simple. It was sacred. Two very different celebrations of life, but each one exactly what they wanted. Now, there are some key questions that you can ask to make everything easier down the line. Whether you use a formal checklist, or start it in a notebook, or put it in your phone. Not all at once, not with pressure, but gently, clearly, before it's urgent, before the person can no longer tell you what it is they want. And if they tell you, pay attention. Don't put it off. Because we know that in caregiving, if we put it off till later there's going to be chaos. And then you won't have a chance to swing back around and ask them. I have talked to so many people where they have said, I wish I would have paid attention when the person I cared about was telling me this stuff. So, gently, clearly, before it's urgent. There are some questions you can ask in advance. Like, do they have a DNR, a do not resuscitate order? Meaning they don't want heroic measures taken, or they want to have CPR, but if they are declared brain dead, they don't want to be kept alive by a ventilator. Is there a durable power of attorney for healthcare? And if so, who is named? That is the person you are going to need to contact. If it's not you, that's the person you're going to need to contact if something comes up with them. Where are the important documents? The insurance, the will. Again, the medical directives, the DNR, the durable power of attorney for healthcare. If they have conservatorship, whatever the important documents are, where are they located? Do they want to be embalmed, or do they want to be cremated? If they want to be cremated, do they want their ashes buried, scattered, or kept? And if they want them to be scattered, where? There are regulations for scattering ashes into bodies of water and for transporting remains across state lines or to another country. So, finding out their wishes ahead of time, you can do research on that and find out the logistics of it so that you're not trying to figure that out when you're in the process of grieving. Now, sometimes the questions don't come from a checklist, they come from a moment. Watching a funeral scene on a TV show, you might ask, would you want to be buried or cremated? Or sometimes they come up, naturally. When my dad and stepmom were visiting that's about a month ago. I've talked about the fact that this was the first time that my dad had seen his mom's grave. And so, naturally, on the way back from the airport, my aunt, his sister, and I were kind of filling in the pieces of grandma's last days for him. And it came up in conversation, like, my stepmom noticed my tattoo. And she was saying, she wouldn't mind having a tattoo, but then it would mean that she wouldn't be able to have a Jewish funeral. And I made a mental note of that. Because last time I checked, I was the executor of their estate. Now with grandma, it was a little bit easier and a little bit more natural because we used to walk through the cemetery together. And she'd point to an area and say, that's where I picked out my plot. No drama, just clarity, just seizing the opportunity. Even photo albums can open the door. Ask them to identify people while they still remember and write the names and the relationships on the back. There were so many faces in grandma's photo albums that we couldn't name. I ended up donating them to the local genealogy society, just in case someone comes looking for family photos one day. Because I didn't have the heart to throw them out. These were people that were obviously important to grandma, that she had their photos in her photo album. So I decided the next best thing would be to give them to the local genealogy society, just in case. These aren't just conversations. They're acts of care. They're ways of honoring memory before it fades. Death isn't morbid. It's sacred. It's part of caregiving, and it's part of love. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And thank you for honoring those hard conversations. The one that makes us care more deeply and grieve more gently. The ones that are truly sacred. Thank you.